All right, let's dive in. Today, we're exploring Sibley State Park in Minnesota. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to look at, trail reviews and websites for the park, even some YouTube videos from people who have been there. Honestly, I'm kind of already hooked just from reading about the history and the hiking. There are even stories about buried treasure.
It really is amazing how much they've packed into this park. It's almost 3,000 acres. And it's not just about, going out and doing stuff. It seems like there's a lot more to it, like learning about the land and the history of the park, even about the guy it's named after, Henry Hastings Sibley.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, maybe we should start with the basics. Where exactly is Sibley State Park and what's so special about its location?
So Sibley State Park is in west central Minnesota. And, it's pretty easy to get to, especially from the Twin Cities. You could think of it as a quick getaway to nature without having to travel too far.
Yeah, I noticed that the main entrance to the park is right off Highway 71. So it seems pretty easy to find. But once you're in the park, what's it like? I mean, the landscape.
Well, imagine you're at the highest point in the park, Mount Tom, I think it's called, and you're standing in the observation tower up there. You've got this amazing 360-degree view of everything. You can see forests, farmlands, prairie knolls, even a bunch of lakes. That's kind of what Sibley is all about, Lots of different types of landscapes, and it's all really beautiful.
Wow, that view sounds incredible. So speaking of exploring, what kind of activities can visitors do at Sibley?
Oh, they've got something for everyone. Hiking, biking, horseback riding. They even have special trails just for horses. Plus camping, swimming, boating, fishing, the list goes on. And when it gets cold, they have cross-country skiing and snowshoeing.
Wow, 18 miles of hiking trails. I saw that on all trails. It's a lot of trails. Are there any that you'd recommend for someone who's not, super experienced hiker?
Oh yeah, they have trails for all skill levels,
Yeah.
from easy walks to, more challenging hikes. If you want a nice hike with some really great views, you should check out the Mount Tom Trail. It's almost 4 miles long, and it takes you right up to that observation tower we were talking about.
Okay, that one's going on my list. What about stuff to do on the water? I saw something about a canoe route that connects a few different lakes.
Oh yeah, the canoe route. It's really cool. You're not just paddling across one lake. You can go from Lake Andrew and then portage your canoe to Hensheen Lake. It's much quieter over there.
Portage. You mean like carrying the canoe? That sounds like a workout.
It can be, yeah. But it's part of the adventure. And if the weather's good, you can even keep going to Swan Lake. So you can paddle across 3 lakes.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. What about wildlife? Any chance of seeing any cool animals while we're out exploring?
Oh yeah, definitely. Sibley has a ton of different animals. You might see white-tailed deer, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, the usual. But what's really special about Sibley is the birds.
I did read that Sibley is a great place for bird watching. What makes it so special for birders?
Well over 206 different types of birds have been spotted there. It's amazing. You can see eastern bluebirds or field sparrows, or maybe even a great blue heron hunting for food by the lake. You might even see some rare birds like the yellow-throated warbler or the Henslow sparrow, so definitely bring your binoculars.
Wow, that's amazing. One of the YouTube videos I watched showed someone who ran into an injured deer. It's a good reminder that nature can be unpredictable and we're just visitors in their world.
Absolutely. We should always be careful and respectful when we're in nature. Speaking of history, I think it's time we talked about the park's namesake, Henry Hastings Sibley. He was the first governor of Minnesota, right?
That's right. It seems like a fitting tribute to name a park after such an important figure.
You'd think so. But Sibley's legacy is a bit complicated. He did a lot to shape Minnesota, but his relationship with Native Americans was, not so simple. He fought for their rights sometimes. But he also supported policies that ended up hurting them. That's something to think about when we're visiting a park named after him.
That's a really interesting point. It definitely adds another layer to the park's story. Those old stone structures all over the park caught my eye. They look like they're straight out of a history book.
Oh yeah, those were built back in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. It was part of Roosevelt's New Deal. It's amazing how they've lasted all this time, and they're actually listed on the National Register of Historic Places now. What's really cool is that the way the park is laid out. That was also designed back then to make sure it wouldn't get too crowded. Pretty forward-thinking, don't you think?
Definitely. It's amazing how much history is packed into this park. It makes you wonder what other stories these trails and trees could tell. So we've talked about the landscape, the activities, and even some history. But what about staying overnight? I'm ready to hear about those cozy camper cabins called campsites.
Oh yeah, those camper cabins are great if you don't want to sleep in a tent. But you still want to, be close to nature. And the best part is they're available all year round.
Yeah, I saw that in one of the reviews. So you can visit Sibley any time of year and still have a great experience. But what about regular camping? With tents and RVs.
Well, for those folks, Sibley has two main campgrounds, Lakeview and Oak Ridge. They're both pretty different, though, so you can choose the one that fits you best.
What are the main differences? I'm always curious about the vibe at different campgrounds.
Well, Lakeview is closer to the lake, obviously, and it tends to be a little more crowded and lively. Some of the campsites there even have electric hookups.
Oh, nice. And what about Oak Ridge?
Oak Ridge is a bit more secluded. The campsites are more spread out, so it feels more private and quiet. And they have a mix of electric and non-electric sites. It's also closer to the camper cabins.
So if you're looking for a more peaceful camping experience, Oak Ridge might be the better choice. It's great that they have options, though. We were talking about trails earlier. You mentioned some good ones for hiking. But what about biking? Are there any trails that are good for cyclists?
Definitely. There's one called the Lake Andrew via Lakeview Trail. It's paved and it goes along the east side of the lake. It even connects to the Lakeview campground.
Oh, so you can just hop on your bike right for your campsite and hit the trail.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, I got to ask you more about that canoe route. I can just picture myself paddling across those calm lakes.
Yeah.
Surrounded by nature. Did any of the sources talk about what that experience is actually like?
Yeah, a few of the YouTube videos showed people canoeing at Sibley. You can really see how peaceful it is out there on those lakes, especially when they show those shots of the water reflecting the sky and the trees.
Sounds magical.
Yeah.
But what about the portaging? How hard is it to actually carry a canoe from one lake to another?
The videos actually show people doing it, and it doesn't look too bad. I mean, it's definitely some work, but it's not impossible. And I think it adds to the whole adventure,
Yeah, I could see that. I kind of like a challenge. Okay, so we've talked about hiking, biking, and canoeing, but what about horseback riding? Did you find anything about the equestrian trails?
Oh yeah, Sibley has over 7 miles of trails just for horseback riding. They even have a whole area just for horses, with places to tie them up, water troughs, and restrooms. They really do have something for everyone.
That's impressive. It shows how much they care about providing all kinds of different ways to enjoy the park. I bet it's so peaceful riding through those forests and prairies on horseback.
Oh yeah, it's a completely different way to experience nature.
Yeah.
And you can cover more ground and see things from a new perspective. All this talk about trails and activities makes me wonder about the people who work at the park. Did any of the sources mention anything about how Sibley is managed?
It looks like the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources manages the park. They're responsible for everything from taking care of the trails and campgrounds to, creating conservation programs.
That's a big job, making sure the park stays healthy and beautiful for years to come. And they're not the only ones. They get a lot of help from volunteers, like the Sibley State Park Improvement Association. They organize events and lead restoration projects and all sorts of stuff. It's really a team effort.
That's really cool. It's inspiring to see so many people who care about the park.
Yeah.
Speaking of community, did you find anything about how the park interacts with the nearby towns?
It sounds like Sibley is a big draw for tourists, which brings a lot of money into the local economy. People stay in hotels, eat at restaurants, that sort of thing. So it's a win-win. Visitors get to enjoy this amazing park, and the local businesses get a boost.
I love that. It shows how parks can be a really important part of a community. Okay, I have to admit, I'm totally hooked on this whole buried treasure thing. Did you find any more details about it?
Well, the sources didn't say much, but it sounds like the rumor is that there's a bunch of old stuff buried somewhere near the beach.
Oh man, that's so cool. I'm already imagining myself searching the beach with a metal detector, hoping to find some lost piece of history.
Now you're getting it. That's the spirit of adventure that Sibley is all about.
Speaking of adventure, I think it's time we talked about the heart of Sibley, its incredible wildlife. We've talked about all these different types of landscapes at Sibley, like forests and prairies and wetlands and even those beautiful lakes. It's no wonder there are so many animals that call it home.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's like all these different habitats create this patchwork of ecosystems, and that means they can support a much wider variety of species than you'd find in a less diverse environment.
You were saying before that Sibley is a great place for bird watchers. Over 206 bird species. That's incredible. What are some of the best birds to see there?
Well, just imagine you're walking through this sunny oak savanna, and all around you, you can hear the songs of eastern bluebirds and field sparrows. Or picture yourself standing at the top of Mount Tom, looking up at the sky, trying to spot these migrating raptors like red-tailed hawks. If you're really lucky, you might even see a golden eagle.
Wow, from tiny songbirds to giant eagles, that's amazing. And what about the lakes? I bet they attract some interesting birds too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Lake Andrew, the main lake in the park, is a great place to see waterfowl. You'll probably see a lot of blue-winged teal and mallards. And you might even see a great blue heron standing by the shore waiting to catch a fish.
I remember one of the YouTube videos we watched had a really cool shot of a northern leopard frog. Those markings are so distinctive.
Frogs are a really good sign of a healthy ecosystem. And Sibley has quite a few different species. You might hear the call of the American toad, or if you're really lucky, you might even see a wood frog. Did you know they can actually survive being frozen solid? They're like little amphibian superheroes.
Wow, that's incredible. So we've talked about birds and frogs. Any chance of running into any bigger animals like mammals?
Yeah, Sibley's got those too. White-tailed deer, red and gray, foxes, coyotes, raccoons, even badgers. It's a good reminder that even though we like to visit these parks and have fun, we're still sharing the space with wild animals.
I love that about being in nature. That sense of sharing the space with other creatures. It makes you feel more connected to the world around you. But it also reminds us that we need to be responsible visitors.
Exactly, like we were talking about before with that injured deer. It's important to be respectful of the wildlife and their homes.
So how can we make sure that we're exploring Sibley in a way that's both fun and sustainable?
Well, it's all about minimizing our impact, you know. Stick to the trails, don't leave any trash behind, and try to be quiet, especially in areas where there might be animals.
And of course, we should always follow the park rules, like keeping our pets on leashes and not feeding the wildlife.
Those rules are there to keep everyone safe, both the visitors and the animals and plants that live in the park. If we all follow the rules, we can help make sure Sibley stays healthy and beautiful for a long time.
It's really inspiring to see how much work goes into managing Sibley, from taking care of the trails to protecting the wildlife. It's clear that a lot of people really care about this place.
Yeah, and it's not just the park staff either. Like we were saying before, the Sibley State Park Improvement Association, those volunteers do so much to help out. They're really dedicated to the park.
It's a great example of how people can come together to take care of something they love. Well, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about Sibley State Park, from its beautiful scenery and diverse wildlife to its rich history and all the fun things to do there.
We've just scratched the surface, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a little taste of what makes Sibley such a special place.
It definitely has for me. I'm ready to grab my hiking boots and head out there to experience it all firsthand.
That's what I like to hear. And hey, who knows, maybe you'll even find that buried treasure.
Now that would be a story to tell. Until next time, happy exploring.